Good morning, everybody. In the Torah we read on Shabbos, it says in the pasuk, "V'chi yomuch ochicha umoto yodo imach." If a person becomes poor, then there's a mitzvah v'hechzakto boy. You should support him financially. And the next pasuk says, "Al tikach me'ito." Do not take from him neshech v'tarbis. Do not take from this person who you lend money to and anything extra. You shouldn't. The word neshech is like biting into somebody. If you take interest on a loan, the Torah calls it neshech. It's like biting into somebody. V'sarbis is if you take extra. Basically, neshech and tarbis is basically the same thing. The next pasuk continues, Es kasbecha loy titen loy beneshech. Your money you shouldn't lend to somebody or give it to somebody in order to gain more, to get back more than you've given. Ubemarbes loy sitten ochlecha. And your food you also shouldn't lend in a way that you will get back more than you have originally lent. And Rashi tells us that the reason why the Torah says it twice is because it's a very, very serious prohibition of the Torah, and the Torah wants people should know that if a person lends money with the intent to get interest, or he lends food with the intent of getting more food than he lent, then he's gone against the Torah in two separate lavim of the two psukim, which it says that one mustn't take extra money. And the Balaturim says here, neshech is nun, which is a 50, which is worth 50, shein, which is worth 300, and chaf, which is a 20. Sorry, how much is it together? 370. So it's the gematria, it's the same numerical value as ze nochosh. This is the snake. So the Balaturim tells us that la'osid lovoi ein hanochosh misrape, the snake after the sin, which it sinned in the beginning of the creation, it has no refu'ah, it will never get back to its original state. And there, similarly, somebody who lends and takes interest will also not come to life again by Tchias HaMesim. Ultimately, when Mashiach comes and we get to the stage of the revival of the dead, the resurrection of the dead, then people who lent money with interest will not come alive once again. They will stay dead. And that's how serious the prohibition of taking interest is, according to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His Torah. There was a story which I think is well known, but maybe not so well known, about a certain money lender who used to lend money for ribis, used to take interest. That was his whole livelihood. His way of making money was lending to Jewish people and taking interest. It was well known. And when the person passed away, he died, the Chevra Kedisha, the people who had to arrange his burial, they asked for a large amount of money from the family in order to sell him the plot of land in the Beis HaKvoros, in the place where they buried people. It's an old custom that they haggle over the price. I'm not saying it's a very exciting custom or a good custom, but that's how it was anyway. And they asked for a massive amount of money. So the family disagreed and said, why should they pay such a lot of money for burying their father? So they went to the Rav, I think it was Rabbi Yacov D, who was one of the greatest Rabbonim in his times. I think it was Rabbi Yacov D. I'm not 100% sure if it was or it wasn't. There's a chair available. And Rabbi Yacov D says, yes, they're right. The Chevra Kedisha are right. Why? Because people who buy a plot, they're buying it only for a time. Because when the resurrection of the dead comes around, they will vacate that plot of land and it'll be vacated. So it's only for a time period. But somebody whose whole business was lending money with interest, he's going to stay there forever. So he has to pay much, much more. That's what Rabbi Yacov D said. Okay. Anyway, now that we know how serious the Torah regards somebody who lends money with taking interest, the main prohibition of the Torah, which is called ribis ketzutza, which means you fix the amount of interest at the time when you grant the loan. That is also min ha-Torah. I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed. Yeah, there's chairs here. There's chairs here. Yeah, so you're not allowed to min ha-Torah lend somebody 100,000 with the condition of getting back 110,000. That's prohibited min ha-Torah, from the Torah. The rabbis also added on that even if at the time of the loan you didn't actually say that stipulate exactly the amount of money which a person is going to get back, you said, I'm lending you 100,000 and 100,000 will get back. But later on, the one who lended the money or the one who took the loan wants to pay back more. That's also against the halacha mid-rabbanon. The rabbanon, rabbinical decree stated that is not allowed. That is not allowed even if it wasn't made at the time of the beginning of the granting the loan. There was no agreement about how much whether more will be paid back or not. Nevertheless, it's still prohibited according to rabbinic law. It's called ribis derabanon, avak ribis. It has the feeling of ribis. It's prohibited. So one therefore is not allowed to give back more money than one took, even though at the time of taking we didn't agree to pay back more. Similarly, the halacha also states that not only if I borrowed 100, I'm not allowed to give back 110 of my own free will, because that is also ribis according to rabbinical decree. I'm not also similarly prohibited, I'm not allowed to give back 100 and say in a place where they sell aliyot Shabbos morning, not like here, I will buy the malva, the person who lent me the money, I'll buy him an aliyah. I feel that he did me a great favor. He lent me a large amount of money, and I paid him back, and I didn't give him anything for it. So I'll buy him an aliyah, or I'll send him flowers, or a box of chocolates, or anything like that. That's also prohibited. That's called, in the rabbinical law, ribis mu'ucheres, ribis which comes after the paying back of the loan. But the reason why I'm doing this is only because the person lent me the money. I don't regularly buy him an aliyah, or I don't regularly send him flowers or chocolates. So the reason why I'm doing it is obvious, is because he granted me a free loan. That's also prohibited. Even more than that, and this is rather stunning, this halacha, it says I'm not allowed to bless the person when I pay him back the chov. I'm not allowed to bless him and say, may God Almighty bless you with great wealth and nachas from your children and all the rest of it, because this blessing which I'm giving him is also, I'm only giving it to him, only giving him this blessing is because he lent me money. And therefore I'm giving him something extra besides the actual money which I'm returning to him. The fact that he's going to get blessed by the Almighty anyway for giving a free loan, that's the Almighty's business. But I, as a money taker, as a borrower, I'm not allowed to give anything extra, and therefore some poskim say, some halachic authorities say, I'm not even allowed to say thank you for giving me the loan. That's how far one has to be careful when it comes to doing favors for somebody who I borrowed money from. I'm not even, according to many poskim, thanking you is also some sort of blessing, and therefore I'm giving him something extra which I normally wouldn't do, and therefore it's prohibited. It comes under the Issa Derabanan of ribis mu'ucheres, ribis which comes after paying back of the loan. And similarly, if I didn't say good morning to him in the past, and only because he lent me money I've started greeting him on the street, you're also not allowed to do that. So therefore, the laws of Ribbis are multitude. There's thousands of laws which can be connected to the laws of Ribbis, and at the present moment it's impossible to go through all of them, and not that I know all of them anyway. But I just wanted to give a small introduction to show how serious this prohibition of giving Ribbis is, that people should know that it's not simple at all to give Ribbis. And the question is asked, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's understand a little bit, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu prohibit this actual taking of Ribbis? What's so wrong with it? Why is it so prohibited, that so serious as far as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is concerned? That's not that we can understand the full idea behind HaKadosh Baruch Hu making this prohibition, but why is it, to some extent at least to understand, why is it so serious? What is so serious about it? I mean, I'm allowed to rent somebody my house, and I get paid for it. That's correct? I'm allowed to rent people my house? Is that anybody have a prohibition against that? No. I'm allowed to rent out my car and whatever it may be. So the question is, why shouldn't I rent out my money? I say to somebody, look, I'm renting to you this 100,000. Please, when you return it, after however many weeks it may, please pay me rent for it. So what's the difference between renting your car and renting your money? Anybody got any differences, any ideas? Why there's a difference between the two? And the answer is given that when I rent somebody my car or my house, automatically the fact of the matter is that I will not get it back in exactly the same state as I've given it, because there is wear and tear. That means some value will go down from the house, or if it's my car, cars which have been rented out lose value because they're used, and everything else loses value when I rent it out to somebody. And therefore the Torah says that's okay. But if I rent somebody my money, this is 100% profit, because I'm getting the money back, let's hope, the full 100% which I lent, and I'm getting money on top of that. That means my money is making money without any loss whatsoever to the provider of the loan. That what the Torah says is the difference between lending money and renting out your money and renting out your car. So that is the difference. We still haven't understood exactly why it's prohibited. Sorry?
100 euro after 2 years, much less.
Inflation. But you're still getting the same amount as you gave back.
Well, there's maybe room to think that if there's such a thing as inflation, then maybe you're giving back the same amount of money, because let's say inflation is 2%, so you give me 100, give me that 102 euro that I'm giving back is equal to the 100 euro.
But this is not.
If you index it, there's an argument to be made. The main thing that
but if the money would stay,
interest, but this is not an interest.
That's not interest.
That is interest.
It's not interest because you're giving back value.
It's not. Inflation is not an interest. Interest is
more value. More value.
Interest is you gain from the money. You give me money for 5 minutes. I give you money for 5 minutes. I want money 6 euros back, not 5.
Right.
So this is again. But in 5 minutes there is no inflation.
Right.
So inflation
no, but
inflation.
The question is whether I'm allowed to.
Not gain money.
Am I allowed to lend it, and I'll lend it to you for a year, and the year according to the rate of inflation or index, or however much money I'm losing in the bank, because if it's in the bank I'm getting interest from the bank, and I'm going to lend it to you and give you a free loan, so I actually have loss. I'm still not allowed to do that.
No.
I'm still not allowed to do that. When you're doing interest in the bank, is saying that I could have invested my money and made money, and now I want you to pay because I lost my... Inflation is something else. Inflation is, I had $1. That dollar was worth that I could buy, 10 carats. Now I could only buy 9. So I want enough money to be able to buy the 10 carats. That's what you basically, and it's indexed across the whole economy.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is that if I had kept that dollar, I still wouldn't be able to buy more than 9 carats at today's price. I wouldn't be able to. It's going down anyway. It's got nothing to do with the fact whether it's lying by me or it's lying by the other person. So I'm actually gaining by lending it to him. That gain I'm not allowed to have. That's what the Torah says. If I would have left it in my pocket, it also would go down in value. So I'm getting more than then I actually.
There's
I
also
have
the
a
risk
question.
involved.
With this all prohibition, and this is not motivating people to help others, because if you lend somebody huge amount of money for a long time, you know you will get actually with all this indexation less money that you gave him. So why should somebody will do it?
Okay, so there's a mitzvah in the Torah. The Torah says you should do gemilas chasodim. So sorry. That's right. So one second. I'm definitely not. I might not be. It's a mitzvah to lend somebody money. To give him a free loan is a mitzvah, a positive mitzvah in the Torah. Although it doesn't say you should. It says here clearly that you lend somebody money. You're not allowed to take ribbis. Sorry.
Is it a mitzvah for the person to return the money?
It's a chiyuv gomer to return money loans.
Is he a gazel if he doesn't?
He might be considered a gazel in inverted commas. He's definitely.
Somebody doesn't say no to you afterwards.
Okay, we're not talking about the problems of people not behaving. We're talking about the way you have to behave, at least.
No, there's also a problem. There is a certain risk involved, because even if the loive is very honest, he uses it for business, and the business can go wrong.
Right,
So
it's true.
there
is a risk. It's true.
That the Karen won't come back at all.
That's
or
true.
only partly.
Nevertheless, when he does pay it back to you, when it doesn't pay it back to you, you're getting more.
We're supposed to pay Karen, we are not supposed to give a loan.
Yeah, I don't know if you're not. One second. Let's get it's clear. It's a mitzvah to lend somebody money.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how much do I have to lend him? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
How much do I have to lend him? According to my capabilities, the money which I'm lending him, I can manage without. Then maybe, I'm not saying, it's a shaila. It doesn't say clearly how much money I have to lend the person. If somebody comes to me and he needs 100,000. Let's say I have 1 million. So am I mechuyev to lend 10% of my money? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm mechuyev to lend 10% of my money, because a mitzvah I say, I'm not mechuyev, just like I'm not mechuyev to spend more than a certain amount of money to buy a lulav and esrog. I might not be mechuyev to spend a certain amount of money to do this mitzvah of lending somebody money. Again, I don't, as you say, I don't have to lend it and take a risk. I'm allowed to lend it and take something in exchange, a mashkin, something which will lie as a guarantee, or either take something as a guarantee practically, or you have to give me guarantors who I will rely on. And then I'll lend the money to you, as long as I have 2 guarantors who I feel that I can rely on them. You, the person who's taking the money is not in a position, or might not be in a position to pay back, then I have 2 other people who I can collect the money from. So then, and I write it clearly in a document, so it's all documented. Of course, you never have a complete risk loan, but again, in the bank, you also might not have a complete risk loan.
The bank, when they make the loans, they do a certain. The first beginning percentages of interest is really not for profit. It's really just because they know statistically that X amount of people are going to default, so they factor that into the interest rate, so that when you're paying back, they're covering their losses. And then on top of that is what they're getting gained. So the question, but I guess you can't charge for risk, right?
You can't charge any interest.
The practical way is to, at least that's what I do, not that I expect everybody to come to have a loan from me now, but that my master could always cover the loss of the loan.
Right.
So therefore there is a certain gather that if things go wrong, God forbid, that it's not so much that
so the Chofetz Chaim says, the Chofetz Chaim in the Hadas Chesed says clearly, when he talks about all the reasons why people don't want to give loans, and he explains how it's the Yetzer Hara who's really on the phone to you and talking to you, he says towards the end it's a great mitzvah to set aside a certain amount of your money to have a free loan society. He says each person can do that. If you're too busy to run it, then you can give it to a gemach, a central gemach. In town here, there are places, there's a gemach which accepts pikadonot. That means you deposit with them, and you get a piece of paper with a card which says how much you deposited, and they'll lend out your money for you. And the Chofetz Chaim continues that you are allowed to set a certain amount of your masa money. People who are giving 10th to tzedakah, they are allowed to give and set aside as a free loan that a certain amount of that masa to be used as a mitzvah, because that's also going ultimately to poor people. that money which you set aside is also going to be used for poor people, and you constantly have the mitzvah every time a loan is got down and a money given back, you're constantly gaining mitzvahs from this amount. So he does say that a person should do that, although, as I said to you, it's not practical for each person to have a small loan fund. Therefore, it is practical to deposit a certain amount of money which a person can afford to this central gemach, and they will deal with it for you. There is, as Mr. de Jong said, an idea of lending a person money and saying in your mind and condition that if this poor person defaults and doesn't pay it back, then as like I've given him a gift from my master money, since the person is probably a poor man who's allowed to take charity, he's allowed to take tzedakah, so therefore I am allowed to lend him the money and say that if he doesn't pay it back, then it's considered part of my master, it's a gift to him, and this poor person will have received a gift.
I have another question. If you give money, so mitzvah, and it is clear that he has to pay back the first of Schmal, for instance, no interest, but he doesn't pay, and you have the feeling that he has money, but he doesn't. And are you allowed to ask interest for this period, which was not agreed on? So he pays, for instance, 2 months later than agreed.
You're not allowed to ask for. You're not allowed to ask, even for that. Even for that.
You can actually default for.
Well, you should call him. You should call him to Bet Din, and the Bezdin should sit on him hard and heavy.
What will the Bezdin do?
What will the Bezdin do? What can the Bezdin do? If the person doesn't pay back before you start the proceedings in Bezdin, it's customary to sign a deed of arbitration. Now, if it's done in the proper way, the deed of arbitration is accepted by the courts in the land, and therefore, for the Bezdin would then decide that the loiva has to pay his loan back. Now, the question is, how far does the Bezdin will paskin according to law, a halacha, that what this loiva has to do in order to pay the money he owes. Actually, somebody phoned me up last week. First time it's really happened, I believe. It seems to be a very, very honest gentleman. And he says, look, I owe lots of money, and I'm working, I'm trying to make a panosa, whatever he's dealing in. How am I meant to pay back? How am I meant to do it? What are my obligations to pay it back? So I said to him, if you take out the Shulchan Aruch, and you look in a certain siman, I think I told him which one to look at, and read it through, you'll see how serious not paying your choivas back. It says clearly in halacha that somebody who owes money, the first money he earns, if you set aside from that money the amount of money this person needs for 30 days of food and clothing, if he hasn't got clothing, whatever his basic needs, and anything else above the 30 days which he needs, he has to pay off his debts with it. That means he's not allowed to give it, automatically he's not allowed to give it to his wife, he's not allowed to give it to his children. He has to pay everything besides his own basic 30-day needs, he has to give away to the person he owes the money to. Besides that, before coming on to that, you sell the things which he owns. If he has, let's say, a silver menorah, or he has goods which he doesn't actually need for his business, which he's running, you sell those goods. You're even allowed to sell his house. According to strict halachic law, if a person's living in a house and he owes money, you sell his house. You can force him to sell his house according to the law.
His wife's name is recently.
If he puts on his wife's name, then we have to decide whether it truly belongs to his wife or it doesn't truly belong to his wife. He only put it there for the reason of trying to get out of it. The Aruch HaShulchan says clearly, the Aruch HaShulchan lived about 60 or 70 years ago, maybe a bit more. He writes clearly that when it comes to deeds, looking at deeds, he writes that in some base maybe, that the Dayanim have to be very careful and check, because they have to really, really be careful. The fact that something is written on a person's name doesn't mean that he owns it, because he writes there's many reasons, without exactly explaining what the reasons are, why a person might put his property in somebody else's name. So if it's serious, he gave it to his wife and he actually intends it to belong to his wife, and his wife could sell it if she wanted or whatever it may be, then you're in trouble. But if the reason why he did it was only in order to get out of paying his chayvus, then it actually won't belong to his wife, and the normal halacha would apply. Although practically, I must say practically, although I was in a din Torah where we were actually paskin, we actually gave out a ruling that the person must sell the house where he's living in. The person who claimed the money, the malva, the one who gave the loan, he didn't feel comfortable to evict this family from the property in order that he should get his loan paid back. He didn't feel comfortable about it. That people go around in town saying, this person, he evicted that person on the street because they owed him money. So he didn't ask for enforcement of that psak.
But isn't it like that what his wife owes, he owes?
Sorry? What his wife owes, he owes, or what his wife owns?
The wife's money also belongs to him. And his property, he owns it.
So what you're saying, even if he put in his wife's...
On his wife's name, but he
doesn't actually own, he's entitled to have the fruits of it, the payers. It comes next to milug. It wouldn't be a good idea to put on your wife's name. No, you put on your children's name maybe. But I'm not giving advice of how to get out of paying loans. You actually should pay back your loans. Practically, I've seen in the name of today's Rabbonim that they don't force somebody out of their apartment they're living, because it'll make the man so ill that he won't be able to continue working in order to continue trying to pay back if he still has outstanding loans. But that's already a question which I'm not going into. We're meant to be talking about ribis, about the problem of paying back extra money, and something which is common and people don't realize. People who are in business and selling goods with credit, giving credit. That means to say, I sell you, for argument's sake, since we live in Antwerp, we'll talk about diamonds. And if I sell you a parcel of diamonds and I say the price is 200 euros a carat, therefore you owe me so much and so much. But if you pay in 30 days, then the price is 1.5% more. That is completely prohibited. Because basically, when the person buys the goods, from that time onwards, he owes the money to the seller of the goods, and therefore the price is according to what I'm prepared to accept today. That's the true price. And if I say I'll give you 30 days credit and you're going to pay 1.5% extra, what I'm saying is to you, I'm lending you the money which you actually owe me, and I'm taking on that 1.5% for 30 days, which is a complete issa of ribis. People don't realize.
So before I do the deal, I said to the guy, if you prepay is one price, if you pay me when delivery is the second price.
Again, if you pay before you get the goods, before you get in the goods, then I'm giving you a discount, because he's not actually, doesn't owe you the money until he gets the goods.
Yeah.
That's I think that's permitted, because you're saying to him, if you pay in advance something which you're not allowed to, then I'm giving you a discount. And if you pay on time, when you get the goods, it's a different price. The only problem is that I am then giving ribis. The seller is giving ribis, because if it's a goy, there's no problem. If the non-Jewish person, there's no problem. You're allowed to give and take ribis from non-Jews. It's only v'chei achicha imach. With the Yid, there's a general problem of giving discounts if you pay in advance. Let's say somebody says, I'm charging for the summer camp. I'm charging you for your son to go to summer camp. It's 1,000 euros. If you pay within a certain date, which is before the camp starts, I'm giving you 10% discount. Actually, what's happening is that the person who's making the camp is saying, if you give me money in advance, that means you're lending me money, really. Yeah. I'm making the camp, and I'm getting money in advance from the person before he really should pay me, because I'm not giving him any services yet. So therefore, what actually is happening is that I'm saying to him, you're lending me the money. Therefore, I'm giving you the camp cheaper, because really it's 1,000 euros, and I'm giving it to you for 800 if you pay me in advance. That's also a problem. That's also a problem of ribis, and one has to know how to deal with that. Because the person who's sending his child to camp is giving me money before he really should have to give them. He's not getting anything, at the present moment he's not getting anything. So what's the money? Why is he giving me money? He's lending me money, because the truth of the matter is that the time he should really pay is when he sends his child to camp. But at the present moment, he's giving to me before that, so that's considered he's lending me money, and that's why I'm giving him a discount.
I see some people buy travel agents, they decide they only pay after they flew. What do you mean? The second you book a ticket, the travel agent has to pay, has to pay already on with the ticket.
Does he? I don't know. Let's say he gets every 30 days, he gets a certain...
Or the camp. I'm sure the things he has to pay in advance.
That's true. So that's what I'm saying. So the general problem is there. You, in particular, if you ask and say to him, listen, I'm renting from you the place already now, but I'm only going to use it. There's ways of getting around it. But I'm just saying, I wanted to show you that there is a problem of giving two prices. There could be a problem of ribbis involved in there.
So that means that Torah doesn't believe in a capitalist system. Like totally is a mistake.
What's the capitalist system? Could you explain
Because
that to me?
part of the interest is a capitalist system.
Part of that they don't agree with. Of making profits, you don't have to be a communist according to the Torah.
The whole idea of Yovel is very against the capitalist system.
In general, the capitalist system, don't say that, please. Don't say that.
No,
part of the capitalist system is rejected. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that sort of, you're allowed to buy and sell and make profit. I think that's also part of the capitalist system. No,
but
you're allowed to be what they call in Russia. What do they used to call these people who used to handle? What were they called?
The socialists do that too. I mean, they'll buy and sell and make profit.
But you're not allowed to. What's it called? Prospect or something. I don't know exactly. No, they had different names for it. You are allowed to make money. The general capitalist system is allowed. But again, minimum wages and certain rights for the person you do have ways of making money according to the Torah. Now, similarly, if I would have a line of credit in the bank, let's say for some reason the bank trusts me because I have large deposits maybe or whatever the reason may be, and I have a line of credit in the bank, and somebody comes to me who doesn't have a line of credit in the bank, and this happens, let me tell you, possibly on a daily basis, between at least the Hasidim, who are very friendly with each other, let's say, in one shtibel, and there's one person who can take a loan from the bank, and there's somebody else who doesn't work officially maybe, or he doesn't work at all, and he wants to buy an apartment, so he goes to his friend and says to him, do me a favor, you can get a loan from the bank, you can take a mortgage from the bank, or do me a favor, take a mortgage from the bank, buy officially this house, the house really will belong to me, and whatever it costs you, whatever you pay in interest, I'll pay to you the interest. Because I don't expect you to pay interest on the house which I'm buying. So basically you're asking your friend that he should borrow from the bank, and any interest which he's charged, I will pay it back. That's also forbidden. Why? Because, as we said, if I will go to the bank and ask for the money, they won't give it to me, because I don't have an official income. So who's the bank actually lending the money to? They're lending the money to my friend who does have a line of credit in the bank, who will get his bank loan. He is then lending the money to me. So it's not the bank who's lending money to the person who doesn't have a line of credit. The bank is lending the money to the person they trust. This person they trust is then lending the money to his friend who wants to buy the house or the apartment. So therefore, although the person who actually takes the loan from the bank is being charged interest, he is not allowed to pass that charge on to me, because he has to give me an interest-free loan. And if he's giving me a loan and I'm going to pay his interest, I'm paying interest on the loan which he's given me. It's true that he has to pay it and I'm causing him, and the agreement was I'm causing him to have to pay the interest, but the Torah nevertheless doesn't allow one person to take a loan from the bank and then lend this money to somebody else, and the second person should pay the interest. That's prohibited according to the Torah. And similarly, the same problem could happen with credit cards. If I allow somebody to use my credit card and there is a cost involved, the cost of interest, not a one-time charge, an interest which they charge an interest for 30 days or whatever it may be, I cannot pass this charge on to my friend who used my credit card. What I want to bring out...
cash advance where they charge you like a 3% fee, is that okay? Or
it depends. If it's a charge, you are allowed to. If I say, let's say, to take money out of the bank, they charge me money, or I want to take it out of the wall, they charge me money for taking it out of the wall, then I'm allowed to charge you that charge as long as it's not connected with a time period. If it's connected with a time period, that's already considered paying for the time, and that's prohibited according to the laws of ribbis. But if
I send an invoice to a client, and then I write, if you pay within 30 days, this is the amount. If you pay more late, then I can charge you some fine, 25 euros extra, because I have costs. I have to send you registered letters and so on. But I cannot write. You have to pay 1.5% per
30 days. A one-time fine is okay.
Good, but not the percentage.
Not a percentage. I'm talking about between Jewish people. And the same thing is, my father once told me, somebody, one of the people down in his shul came to him and told him he needed money for his business, and his wife had money in the bank, or building society in those days it was, where she was earning a certain amount of interest. So he says to his wife, this chap, maybe you give me a loan, and whatever you lose from the interest, I'll pay you. So it was between the husband and wife. That's also not allowed. You're not allowed just because your wife is lending you the money and she's losing interest. It might not be allowed. It's not allowed for you to. You're not allowed to go and pay her the interest back. What I wanted to bring out in today's shir is that there's a great amount of possibilities that a person could fall into the trap of actually charging without realizing. A person could say, it's costing me money, so why shouldn't it cost you money? Why shouldn't you pay my bills, my interest, which I have to pay? Which people don't realize that there might be a prohibition of ribbis in that. And the same thing, but charging more for giving two prices, things like that, people don't realize that is involved. So therefore, I would like, not today, but some other time, to discuss the ways of how to pass by this problem of ribbis, and how Chazal, our rabbis 2,000 years ago, also saw that in order for business to go on, people need to take loans, and they also saw that people were not willing to give free loans. As somebody suggested before, that it's too much to ask for a person to give a free loan. So Chazal already saw this problem, and they started making ways and giving ways to encourage people to give loans and somehow get some return on their money. And that, at the time of Chazal, was called an iska, it was called a business. And later on it developed into what's known today as a heter iska, which is not the real thing, but it's something which also provides a framework where a person can give a loan and get money for his loan. In Mitzvah, we'll have to talk about that some other time because time is short. Everybody should have a good week.